This episode is entitled, Mozart's Death, Natural or Not? How and why did Mozart die at the tender age of 35? My goodness, the theories abound. Let's talk about some of these theories, and let's try to stick to the facts. During the summer of 1791, just months before his death, Mozart was anonymously commissioned to compose a Requiem Mass. More than any other single event, it is this anonymous commission that fed the rumor that Mozart had been murdered, that a dark, sinister messenger from the underworld had compelled Mozart to compose his own funeral music. Yes, many years later, Mozart's widow purportedly told an interviewer, and we quote, "Some 6 months before his death, he was possessed with the idea of his being poisoned. 'I know I must die,' he exclaimed. 'Someone has given me aqua tofana,' which is a mixture of arsenic and lead, 'and has calculated the precise time of my death, for which they have ordered a requiem. It is for myself that I am writing this," unquote. This, my friends, is the earliest recorded statement that Mozart may not have died a natural death. So, who did it? Who killed Mozart? According to the play Mozart and Salieri, written back in 1830 by Alexander Pushkin, the killer was Mozart's colleague and erstwhile paisan, the composer Antonio Salieri. Pushkin's play became an opera in 1898 and became the backbone for the play and movie Amadeus, which won an Oscar for Best Picture in 1984. And why was Antonio Salieri, who in his lifetime was considered a stand-up good guy, blamed for killing Mozart? Because in 1823, at the age of 73, Antonio Salieri attempted suicide by slashing his own throat. He survived, though from that moment until his death 2 years later, he claimed that he had poisoned and killed Mozart. You know, we hate to let the facts get in the way of such a good story. But in fact, there's virtually no reliable evidence that Salieri killed Mozart. And he was completely nuts when he made his confession. In 1861, a German poet and philosopher named George Daumer claimed that the Masons killed Mozart for revealing Masonic secrets in his opera, The Magic Flute. Could I even start to make this up? Let's say it all together. Mozart was not poisoned. Not a single one of the doctors who saw him in his final days ever suggested that he had been poisoned, and none of the symptoms Mozart suffered corresponded with any known poisons, including aqua tofana. As for the anonymous commissioner of the Requiem, it turns out that it had been commissioned by a guy named Franz von Walsegg, a wealthy musical amateur whose MO was to commission works from professional composers and then pass them off as his own. Walsegg wanted to add Mozart to his stable of ghostwriters, and Mozart, desperate for cash, was happy to comply. The Requiem, left unfinished at Mozart's death, was not intended as his own funeral music. It was a gig, a composer for hire gig. Sadly and ironically, it was the last music he ever composed. So, what did kill Mozart? Well, according to his death certificate, he died of heated miliary fever, which was 18th century for, damned if we know. A contemporary newspaper claimed that he died of dropsy of the heart,